我爱中医。
我爱中医。
J'aime la médecine traditionnelle chinoise.
Ich liebe TCM.
Szeretem a hagyományos kínai orvoslást.
من علاقه زیادی به طب سنتی چینی و طب سوزنی دارم.
பாரம்பரிய சைனா வைத்திய முறைகளை மிகவும் விரும்புகின்றேன்.
I love Chinese medicine. Thrilling 7 days of drama for the TCM community. I would like to dedicate this film to senior overseas Chinese medicine practitioners, colleagues who fought to protect the law, and all friends who paid attention, supported our cause, and supported the law. On the afternoon of February 28th, the College of Traditional Chinese Medicine Practitioners and Acupuncturists, CTCMPAO, announced to 2,700 registered Chinese medicine practitioners and registered acupuncturists that the Ontario government would take measures to gradually close the Ontario Chinese Medicine Practitioners and Acupuncturists Administration. The Ontario Provincial Legislature first passed reading on Friday the 28th, 2022, Act Number 88, with the fifth item of the Labour Law repealing the Traditional Chinese Medicine Act, hereinafter referred to the Repeal of Traditional Chinese Medicine Act. The Ontario Progressive Conservative Party, which proposed the motion, has a majority government of 76 seats of the 124-seat provincial parliament. No special circumstances occurred, and the expected second reading of the provincial parliament was set for March 3rd, and the third provincial parliament for March 7th. When reading, the pass rate is almost 100%. At this time, the life of traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture, and moxibustion industry in Ontario was hanging by a thread and facing extinction. The repeal of the Traditional Chinese Medicine Act law passed first reading of the Provincial Assembly without the knowledge of Chinese medicine industry leaders and without consulting the industry, which is an operation that violates democratic procedures. The repeal of the Traditional Chinese Medicine Act would abolish the regulation of TCM and acupuncture, allowing untrained individuals to perform invasive acupuncture under the dermis and mucous membranes and perform diagnostic treatments that are unique to TCM. This would directly threaten the public safety, depriving safety of the public and violating the public interest. The repeal of the Traditional Chinese Medicine Act would have abolished the traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture industry from the 26 regulated medical and health professions in Ontario, and positioned traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture as an ordinary skilled labor, which would have been a great retrogression in history. This offense was of course met with strong opposition from the TCM acupuncture industry, patients of Chinese medicine, the public, and the whole community at all levels, as well as large-scale protests against the repeal of the TCM law. On March 1st, the website against the abolition of traditional Chinese medicine law was designed and launched by Ms. Kathy Fung, an industry insider. Online, there were more than 38,000 signatures within 7 days. In addition to the signatures, nearly 3,000 officially registered Chinese medicine practitioners and acupuncturists in Ontario, the majority of whom are Ontario residents. As we all know, under the operation of unqualified people, acupuncture can lead to life-threatening injuries such as infection, pneumothorax, and even death. Ontario voters expressed strong dissatisfaction and opposition for the loss of their own public safety. On March 1st, a number of industry organizers formed the Ontario Grand Coalition against the repeal of Traditional Chinese Medicine Act. On March 2nd, the Ontario Grand Coalition against the repeal of the Traditional Chinese Medicine Act drafted an open letter to Premier Ford, MLAs, and voters across the province. On March 3rd, Canada's two largest Chinese language media, Singtao Daily and Mingpao, simultaneously published a full-page letter to Premier Ford, MEPs, and voters across the province. On March 3rd, 5 Chinese medicine acupuncture associations and 6 Chinese medicine and acupuncture colleges collectively signed a statement, the need to negotiate and reach consensus. The bill to repeal the Chinese Medicine Act will cause thousands of people to fall under healthcare chaos. On March 3rd, Ontario Premier Doug Ford formally responded to the media that the existing management system prevents people who can only speak Chinese from taking the Chinese medicine practitioner and acupuncture practice exams, and the provincial government's abolition of the law is intended to break the language barrier. The Ontario Board of Chinese Medicine Practitioners and Acupuncturists later said the language proficiency requirement could be waived. On March 4th, the English language media The Globe and Mail published a half-page article entitled Open Letter to Premier Ford, MLAs, and Voters Across the Province. On the morning of March 4th, the Ontario Coalition Against the Abolition of Traditional Chinese Medicine Act held a mass media conference urging the provincial government to delete the section on the Abolition of Traditional Chinese Medicine Legislation Act No. 88. More than 20 English and Chinese media were present. Representatives of traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture education organizations, societies, practitioners, teachers, students, patients, community, and the public all made speeches expressing strong dissatisfaction and opposition, and announced that on March 7th a protest demonstration would be held in front of the provincial parliament building. The picture shows many people holding placards outside the venue to protest provincial government's repeal of Chinese medicine legislation. On the afternoon of March 4th, the official website of the College of Traditional Chinese Medicine Practitioners and Acupuncturists of Ontario announced that the TCM PAO's language proficiency requirement for registration and continued language support were clarified. On March 6th, the Grand Alliance actively contacted Chinese medicine and acupuncture societies in Canadian provinces and countries around the world for solidarity. Its 96 letters of solidarity will be sent to the mailboxes of Ontario Premier Ford, Minister of Health Christie, Labour McNaughton, and the Honourable Monty, Minister of Training and Skills Development, Kalendra, Honorary Paul, Minister of Legislative Affairs, and 12 members of the Advisory Committee, including the Director and Deputy Director. On March 7th, the Grand Alliance held a protest demonstration in front of the Provincial Parliament building at 9 a.m. That morning, more than 600 people gathered in front of the Provincial Assembly. At the peak of the entire protest, the number of people at the rally exceeded 1,000. Among the participants, worried patients, practitioners with broken hearts, students with tears in their eyes, teachers in tears, provincial legislators filled with righteous indignation, and people from all walks of life who gathered to respond. The crowd was furious at the scene, and the protesters chanted, "Abolishing traditional Chinese medicine, natural law will not tolerate it. Protecting the public's medical and health rights and interests. Protecting professionalism and safety of traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture. Maintaining qualifications of traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture. Do not harm the public." Slogans such as Ontario needs to register Chinese medicine practitioners and acupuncturists, graduation means unemployment, stop repealing the Chinese Medicine Act, and other slogans. The protest had a strong impact on the Provincial Council. Coalition representatives Dylan Kirk and Dr. Li Tanhui were temporarily invited as association representatives to enter the Parliament building to have a dialogue with the government, and then answered questions at a press conference held by the Liberal Party. During the same period, representatives of a number of political parties in the Provincial Council rushed to protest sites to deliver speeches, recognizing the importance of TCM legislation and resolutely safeguarding the health and safety of the general public. An update was received from members of the TCM Board of Ontario. At 2:40 on March 7th, the Ontario government would not continue to enforce the TCM Repeal Act of 2022. Schedule 5 of Act 88 was stricken from the record. This black swan incident of the repeal of traditional Chinese medicine law in Ontario has forced unprecedented solidarity in the industry under the crisis of a life on the line. During the thrilling 7 days protecting the law in various ways and turning the industry crisis into an opportunity for the development, within 7 days the official notice from the provincial government removed the repeal of the Traditional Chinese Medicine Act by Law 5 of the Labour Act No. 88 from 2022 and decided to increase the Chinese test, which is the end of the traditional Chinese medicine protection in Ontario, and the Flash Protection Movement has also completed its historical mission. For the success of this protection, I would like to thank the majority of Ontario TCM acupuncturists, family members of practitioners, patients, and the general public for their support, the Chinese and communities for their participation and support, the parliamentarians and of all parties for their righteous words, and the provincial government for their timely amendments. I would also like to thank the TCM and acupuncture associations of the provinces of Canada for their solidarity, as well as the support and solidarity of the TCM and acupuncture organizations and international TCM practitioners in Europe, the United States, and around the world. We have achieved victory. The history of acupuncture and moxibustion of Chinese medicine in Ontario and Canada will remember this moment, and it will also be recorded in the history of international Chinese medicine development forever.